Welcome to this short recording giving a little background to the UK voluntary and community sector. This sector may be a new concept to you depending on where you come from. For UK students, you may not have considered this sector beyond perhaps charity shop fronts or maybe food banks or perhaps occasional volunteering of your own. With this recording, we aim to explain a little bit about the voluntary and community sector, its values, considerable challenges, and even more considerable expertise. But to begin with, we should address the different languages used. At the Community Research Initiative, we use the term voluntary and community sector, but it is sometimes talked about in different terms, including not-for-profit, charity, civic, community, and sometimes the third sector. This last term is to distinguish the sector from the private sector, which is profit-making, and the public sector, which is the state, or another way to think of it is the government. It is perhaps easier to focus on the values of this sector, whichever name it is that we use for it. What really distinguishes this sector is that it is values driven. It is focused on developing social wealth and not economic. It is sometimes confusing to people using the word voluntary in its name. The sector is not delivered by people who are only volunteering. It contributes billions to the UK economy and in 2019 employed almost 1 million people across more than 160,000 organisations. So what are these organisations? Well, they are community groups, can be really grassroots, really local, working with a very small particular set of people. They can be citywide or even areas within a city, and they can also be on the national or international scale. And what is it that they do? What is the work? The main focus of these organisations or groups is making real positive change to people's lives on a particular issue. So for example, climate change or people living with dementia, perhaps barriers to education or racism. It is about support and representation, and often services are provided, such as running a shelter for women or providing legal advice, maybe languages classes. And the work that they do includes fundraising, awareness raising, the provision of these support services, direct action, advice giving or advocacy. At a higher level, the work is about making sustainable change, and so strategically, the work of this sector is often on local, national and international policy. COVID has really squeezed the voluntary sector, and there are worrying challenges. There's an increased demand for the sector due to the societal and economical consequences of the pandemic. The sector has been as innovative and creative as we have had to be in universities to go online with digital approaches. However, this has been without the huge resource and infrastructure that we are privileged with. There are challenges around identifying those in need. Need has broadened, and people never before needing the support of this sector suddenly do. There are challenges to the sector, therefore, to leverage their data and be strategic whilst at the same time continuing with day-to-day services and work, and sometimes different work. There are restrictions on fundraising. The public have less money now for donations than they would have before, and there are fewer people moving around during lockdowns, for example. Charity shops had to close, and therefore the commercial outlets were no longer available. There are financial challenges to organisations' own finances. 2 in 4 charities have deteriorating finances between the first and the second lockdowns in the UK in 2020, and 1 in 7 think that they will likely close. And finally, there are problems with volunteer retention. So after an initial amazing public response in the UK and uptake of volunteering, with people now returning to work and education, retention of these new volunteers is challenging. It must be emphasised and championed that the voluntary and community sector really fills gaps within the public or state sector. In 2010, the coalition government in the UK made it clear through policy that this sector was going to have to take on more work that used to be done by the public sector. Many see this as reducing state funding by moving the work out of governmental financial responsibility. Some organisations receive government commissions to do this, and in fact some organisations are better suited and more reactive than areas of the public sector. But it is removing state responsibility of some of our most vulnerable citizens. There are unique, deep strengths to this sector. It operates completely differently to those of us in universities. It is reactive and singularly focuses on change for good at an individual level as well as at the community level and beyond. There really is a deep wealth of knowledge, experience, skill and expertise within the sector, some of which is totally absent from a university setting. Think about homelessness as a research topic. What university researchers and students know about homelessness will always be limited without personal, or what we sometimes call lived experience. Even if a researcher has consulted with a, say, homelessness charity, maybe someone has come and sat on an advisory panel for a research project, the research still comes from a certain perspective and from a position of power. And there is no shame in this, but where there is shame is not acknowledging that someone else or a different sector may know more and may know better. People working in the sector have either experienced whatever the focus of their organisation is, or they are expert at supporting those who do, like our example with experiencing homelessness or rough sleeping. The people who work in an organisation looking at these issues, their understanding is totally different to ours from within a university, who are really unlikely to have experienced it. At the Community Research Initiative, we recognise and value the sector knowledge and expertise. It is as important, if not more so, than our own.